Hi, everyone here and around the world. A few days ago, PennState PhD astronomer and astrophysicist Stephanie Wissel reported this news headline. Quote, "Strange radio pulses detected coming from ice in Antarctica," close quote. Then the scientists were focused on Antarctica when the radio wave research began, because the ice-bound and isolated South Pole continent does not have much radio interference. So the scientists thought they might even be able to track neutrinos there, meaning in the Antarctic ice. But the latest particle physics news is that, quote, "Neutrinos' maximum possible mass has shrunk even further and seems invisible," close quote. They're not even sure if it's there. But this April of 2025, there has been a breakthrough by Penn State University astronomer and astrophysicist Stephanie Wissel, PhD, who researches neutrinos, these tiniest subatomic particles, the most small known to humans and still supposed to be there. And they're even questioning that now. At Penn State in Pennsylvania, Dr. Wissel, PhD, is Associate Professor of Physics, Astronomy, and Astrophysics. Professor Wissel is one of the researchers who discovered radio waves in Antarctica while searching for neutrinos. Dr. Wissel says, quote, "The radio waves that we detected were at really steep angles, like 30 degrees below the surface of the ice. But the strange signals are not neutrinos," close quote. So what are they? On June 15th, 2025, Fox News reported, quote, "Scientists detect mysterious radio waves coming from beneath Antarctica's ice," close quote. That same day, this space.com headline, quote, "Mysterious radio pulses detected high above Antarctica may be evidence of an exotic new particle," scientists say. Quote, "We still don't have an explanation for what those radio wave anomalies are," close quote. I called retired U.S. Navy Captain Mark Wood in Florida, who has long worked with me on research of alleged extraterrestrials deep under Antarctica at the Earth's South Pole, and he has also helped me investigate military source descriptions of an alleged massive black pyramid deep underground near Mount Denali in Alaska. I have done dozens of reports about that at my news website, Earthfiles.com. Military sources say that deep beneath Mount Denali is truly a very large ancient black pyramid allegedly discovered in World War II during the construction of what is called the White Alice Communications System, or WACS. As Penn State headlines persist about the strange radio wave pulses detected from under deep ice in Antarctica and up into the stratosphere, so I reached out again to retired U.S. Navy Captain Mark Wood and asked him to investigate the Antarctica news.
First of all, we have no idea where they were located when they raised this balloon receiver 26 miles above the ice. Were they in an area that was nothing but ice? Were they in an area that had only a shallow covering of ice and maybe water frozen? And to say that it was coming from the ice, then you would have to be in a place where there was ice. They said that the signals that they were receiving were coming out of the ice at an angle of about 30 degrees. Well, if you take a right triangle that has a 30-degree angle in it, so you've got a 90-degree angle underneath this antenna, which is 26 miles high, then in order to find the distance away from where these signals would be coming, you use simple geometry. The geometry is that the tangent of that 30-degree angle equals the 26 miles above the distance between the radio wave and the receiver, and the tangent of a 30-degree angle is 1 over the square root of 3. So it turns out that when you do a very simple math, the distance that they're receiving those signals from is 45 miles.
The cosmic particle detector in Antarctica was described in the first release. Strange radio pulses detected coming from the ice in Antarctica. But as I understand it, this orientation, this 30-degree orientation, cannot be explained by the current understanding of particle physics, and that it could hint, as some of the news releases said, to brand new types of particles or interactions previously unknown to science, close quote.
When you say that you're receiving radio waves coming through the ice, what frequency are they?
Could it, by any possibility, be the military that have been assigned periodically to go deep down 2 miles below the Beardmore Glacier? That's what's in my documentary. Alien secrets beneath the Antarctic ice below that area of Antarctica. And that testimony coming from those military sources, that if you go down approximately 2 miles from this top area where there is a structure that they use as a marker, that you will end up in 9-acre rooms. It's hard to even imagine what that means, a 9-acre room, hallways that are glowing with green light, stones that are completely filled with symbols that are somewhere between Mayan and glyphs. Could this be the beginning of finally our government beginning to open up, with the help of scientists, the presence of extraterrestrial labs, extraterrestrial facilities deep down in a place like Antarctica?
It's possible. We know that there are military activities going on in Antarctica that involve ancient aliens, visitors from other places to Earth, and that there are scientists and military people that are investigating what they have found. And a perfect example is this underground facility in the Beardmore Glacier area that is 2 miles below the ice. And we also know that there have been military expeditions there to search for and recover or help aid scientists that hadn't been heard from. And typically, when you're out in the field in Antarctica, you're communicating with a base facility with a radio. Sometimes it'll be a classified radio that is scrambled. Other ways, it'll be just a regular radio. So those type of things are there, but the ability to pick up those type of signals or know that that's where they're coming from has everything to do with where they are raising this balloon receiver 26 miles in the air. The South Pole, it's not near the Beardmore Glacier, and there may be nobody there.
Well, let me just include here one quote from one of the scientists. We use radio detectors to try to build really, really large neutrino telescopes so that we can go after a pretty low expected event rate. Now, as I understand it, that was the original goal, that they were looking for neutrinos. But now, what is it that they have found?
Well, the confusion I think that this team had was that they mentioned that they thought that they were finding neutrinos, but then the measurements they were getting, I assume in terms of frequencies they were seeing their signals, didn't match other neutrino studies. So they're sort of confused or not really sure as what it is they're seeing. And I think, unfortunately, they're using very generic term radio waves because that encompasses a large variety of frequencies. Is it something that's bouncing off the surface and getting to their antenna? They made it very clear that they were using this antenna to look for signals coming in from the far distant space area with a galaxy or other galaxies. And they were in Antarctica because they thought that would be the quietest place because they wouldn't be bothered by TV stations, radio stations, etc., that are in civilized areas.
Right. And would you say that this is a genuine mystery, or is a government, like our government, telling the scientists that they can report about neutrinos, but they can't report about the extraterrestrial intelligences that they know are based in Antarctica?
Anything that has a possibility to open the door that's been closed for 80 years as to the existence of aliens on this planet and our knowledge and cooperation with them is going to be shut down. I think the first way that the government will do that is that the government knows where they have people below the ice, and they're not going to let people go to that area to take this antenna 26 miles up.
Which is what my documentary, Antarctica Alien, Secrets Beneath the Ice, and the SEAL, the U.S. Navy SEAL and the U.S. Marine in that film are based on their own experiences, their own knowledge. And ever since it came out in 2018, my documentary, it goes for 90 minutes with a tremendous amount of information that might be relevant to the discovery now at Penn State of what they are trying to understand. And I'm just curious, as a retired U.S. Navy captain, Mark, what is your perspective right now in June of 2025 on the existence of totally extraterrestrial other intelligences based underneath Antarctica, perhaps in the core of the Earth, out at Ganymede and beyond?
No doubt in my mind that Antarctica, because of its isolation, is a place where extraterrestrials can feel safe and comfortable habitating and scientifically investigating or doing what they need to do here on Earth, whether it's working with us to help against aliens that are probably not very friendly or whatever can be done, that Antarctica is probably the best place on the planet for them to do that. And there is no doubt over the years that there have been any number of experiences of sightings, of contact, and there's no doubt that there are places that are there. Not only that, based on the information that you received when you interviewed the former SEAL Spartan 1, these aliens and whatever structures they created probably have been here tens of millions or hundreds of millions of years.
Or at least in the hundreds of thousands of years. I know that the Navy SEAL stressed that there was, in his own background, they told him that this was a extraterrestrial architecture and language and a location that had apparently existed all the way back to when Antarctica was hot, had plants, had dinosaurs, and then there was that remarkable transition from that big island going down past the equator and ending up in what we call Antarctica at the South Pole, but that it is the same gigantic landmass that once was above the equator, and that it probably had all kinds of life forms on it then.
No doubt. I think that if you take your mind back to 30, 40, 50, 60, 100,000 years ago, if there was an ancient civilization or an alien civilization that was going to come to Earth for whatever reason, and they were going to establish a colony, a base, or whatever to do what they wanted to do, and obviously as things went on, there was probably a no contact, and they wanted to avoid people for the most part, unless there was some reason to do an abduction to check something, to do something. So they've been in the shadows probably 95% of the time they've been here.
Yeah, and Professor Wissel at Penn State said in some of her interviews, quote, "We might end up detecting neutrinos, which would in some ways be exciting, but we should pick up more anomalies and maybe we'll actually understand what they are," close quote. She's saying we don't really know what we've got here.
There's no doubt about that. And if you think about the classification that our communications have in terms of military communications, there are frequencies and scrambled frequencies and encrypted frequencies that basically, if you pick them up, it'll just sound like garbage because you don't have the ability to decrypt what you're hearing. And that may be part of the problem, is that they're finding stuff, but it's confusing.
Antarctica alien secrets beneath the ice is one of the most important mysteries that I have investigated. And all of my documentaries now are available at Amazon Prime Video and Vimeo On Demand, and they include Antarctica Alien Secrets Beneath the Ice, and they include Göbekli Tepe, that I entitled Extraterrestrial Terraforming, A Strange Harvest, and Strange Harvest 1993, about all of my many investigations of bloodless, trackless animal mutilations, also linked to the presence of extraterrestrials. And now I want to connect with one of my best friends on Earth and in the universe, and it is Ian Holling in England. Ian, God bless you and your dad and your family in this time. And I want to share with you that may the thought that dwells in the light protect all of you and your family forever, with deep thanks from me always for all that you do for Earthfiles. You truly are a special soul, and may your father, wherever he is now, be with the thought that dwells in the light. Ian.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for that. And I'd like to say thank you as well to everybody, all the people, or the audience, and all the viewers who took their time to share their condolences with me at this time. I really appreciate that. Your help and support has helped me a lot. And it's great to be back here with you now, Linda, and it's great to be back here after what a wonderful presentation about this new mystery. Well, it's a mystery, let's say, that I think it's been reported to be going on for 10 years, this signal anomaly, and, you know, to see how people are trying to work out what's going on.
Yes, and one of the things that we can do at Earthfiles is keep updating, because I think there is a major link here to the documentary that I have done, which is about the Navy SEAL and what is 2 miles down underneath the Beermord Glacier. I think that it's probably two sides of the same incredible story.
Yes, well, that's it. Let's keep an eye on it and keep updating as we go. So we'll bring more information on that again. We've got this link with the Black Pyramid. Maybe it's
right.
Again some sort of similar anomaly here underneath the ice in Antarctica that's creating this anomaly. And the Elizabeth says, wasn't there a remote viewing session that saw the Black Pyramid or inside the Black Pyramid in Alaska?
Well, there have been many. I have been sent over the last 15 years various remote viewers, comments and their efforts. And some of them have been complex, some of them have been detailed, some have had illustrations. And I would say if you took everything that has been sent to me, it is the same story. There is a gigantic black pyramid deep underground near Mount Denali in Alaska. And our government knows a lot about it. Why are we not being introduced? And that gets into the question of so many things about the editing out of our lives on Earth, the truth that we are not alone in this universe, that it's teeming with life. They've been here on this planet repeatedly for eons, and that black pyramid was not discovered, as I understand it, until the World War II efforts going up into Alaska, having to do with military strategy. And today, in 2025, as we go forward in this year that we all hoped, and I think have anticipated, maybe is the right word, that this is the year that we might finally, from a congressional hearing, from the White House, from somebody, that there's going to be a declaration that we're not alone and we're going to be actually introduced to other intelligences and beings. And if it keeps being drawn out further, why? Why can we not be talked to and told about the deep pyramid? Why can't we be told honestly what is deep underground, at least 2 miles for some of the structures in Antarctica? And that is what is one of the main reasons that we come together here at the Earthfiles YouTube channel, is to try to do updates and hope. The big issue is for those of you who have military medical experiences with actual non-humans and you've been introduced to them as such, if you can get a hold of me and we can continue to do reports together. That's been my goal on the Earthfiles YouTube channel. And Ian in England is my right arm, left arm in interfacing with all of you and finding information that comes in, messages, comments, emails, that will relate to you, those of you who have firsthand experiences and military professional experiences that you can share with me, with my protection. I protect everybody I work with, but the content keeps adding up to more and more and more weight on the side, W-E-I-G-H-T, weight, on the side that we are in a waiting period to finally be told the whole truth, I hope. And on that note, Ian, let everybody know in the chat and messages that if they have personal firsthand military, science, medical experiences with ETs and or people that are in military, that have assignments that relate to ETs, those are the kinds of reports now that I think would help with opening up the truth. So let's emphasize that.
Yes, if anybody listening or watching, because don't forget, we can anyone who gets their podcasts from wherever you get your podcasts from, you can get this Earthfiles broadcast and every other Earthfiles broadcast as a podcast as well. If you have experience, please contact us at earthfiles@earthfiles.com. And you mentioned there about the military connection as well. We've had references to the Brian S. interview that we have as Earthfiles, which was done in, I believe, 2016 and has now reached something like 2 million views. And we have that video as well up there.
Right.
Brian S. was witness to what seemed to be an active ET base in Antarctica. We often think that these bases may be inactive or old, but certainly they may be active. Can Can you comment on that, please, Linda?
Yes, and Brian Stensef is one of the most important interviews that I have done for Earthfiles, for Ancient Aliens, and he and I stay in touch. He is really a good human, a good soul, and he has no confusion whatsoever about, while they were in Antarctica, that and flying over the Beardmore Glacier, that Beardmore Glacier is one of the geographic keys, that they would repeatedly see silver glints in the sky. And like you said, the first time it was, what are those lights? And then they realized it was sun off of metal. And that they would be flying together in some kind of form or pattern, the glints that they would then see, that because then they would change their own plane to go toward the lights, and then they could see that they were patterns of discs, a few triangles, and they were clearly craft. And when he finally left Antarctica, he said it was one of the biggest topic subjects that went on among the military people who were there on assignment, that this is the government asking them to be there, that they all could exchange information about the craft they saw moving rapidly over the Beardmore Glacier, a huge, gigantic, at least 100 feet, perhaps 300 feet, the size of a football field, a huge scalloped that was, otherwise it looked like snow, but they flew so they could see, and the snow went right up to a ramp that was going down, so that was even, it was like an effort to disguise with snow a place that they then discovered, my heavens, there's this huge ramp that is going down below. And Antarctica, since World War II and Hitler and all of what happened with Admiral Byrd, on and on and on, there have been these facets of high strangeness around Antarctica. And today, it seems to me that we are beginning, anyway, to get closer to people who are willing to flesh out that statement that William Mills Tompkins told me before he died at age 94 a few years ago. Linda, World War II was an extraterrestrial war fought through human bodies. Gave me all kinds of information about Hitler's emphasis on the blonde, blue-eyed, white skins, all kinds of information that he had from working in aerospace because he had a gift with design, and that they knew where they were working, that extraterrestrials that Adolf Hitler talked about were present on the planet and were involved with World War II. So what is the relationship today in 2025? That's what I think we all deserve to know, the truth. And for those of you who do know some facets of truth, whether from military or medical backgrounds or what science, those are the kinds of subjects that I would really like to flesh out while we're in this sort of waiting period of getting finally to a global announcement. Go ahead, Ian.
Okay, we're posting in the chat tonight the links to the Brian S. interview, the full interview, and we'd urge anyone who hasn't listened to that interview to go there. I was actually present with Linda and with you, Linda, and Brian S., as you know, back in the desert, when contacting the desert was really in the desert with
that's right.
tarpaulins flapping in the wind and dust and all that. And we had a great time with Brian, and I can definitely vouch for Brian's character.
Absolutely.
A really great guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we're also...
Go ahead.
It's great to hear as well that the documentaries are available on Amazon, and we're posting links for that as well. And also I've posted links to the Earthfiles shop so people can get and
on Vimeo on demand as well. Vimeo on demand and Amazon Prime
Both
Video.
those links, Amazon and Vimeo Prime, are linked from the Earthfiles shop as well. So that's
Okay.
great.
Thank you.
Jack the lad in the chat says, which artifact or story related to Antarctica would be Linda's favourite?
Wow. That is a very good question, actually. I think I'll answer it this way. The most haunting that's haunted me to this day description that I ever heard was not from any of the people we've been talking about now or is in my documentaries, because this person would not go on the record in any way because of his work in the American military. But he approached me at a conference about 10 years ago. And some people do that have military or medical backgrounds, and they want me to know information, and they approach me in a noisy conference, and it protects them. And I will never, ever, ever reveal somebody who requests anonymity. But I have learned a lot. And this is what this particular individual told me, totally separate from all of these other that I have produced about. He said that he was with a group, approximately 8 or 12, and they were a military trained operation specifically to go into an entrance in the Beardmore Glacier. Same place, same words, totally separate people, separate time, separate everything, but what they're dealing with appears to be the same. And they were there because there had been some kind of a sound, there'd been something that had happened, which when they were guided by the people who were assigning them to find out what was happening at this location under the ice beneath the Beardmore Glacier, they were given like a map, they were given some instructions in this case, and where they went, completely different from what we have been talking about in my documentary and Brian. They end up in a hallway. It's not like the green light that was in the illustration. But there were about a dozen men. They had a place to go to. They are arriving at the location. It is deep down, and it was also the Beardmore Glacier, but way deep down. And all of a sudden, in the space that they all are, he said, one of my friends went, like, pay attention. And he said, coming through the walls, and they look like natural rock walls, not anything constructed, he didn't know what to call them. He said, I don't know what they were. Are they ETs? Are they ghosts? Are they gremlins? And he was being funny about the categories that we have. And he said, but there were half a dozen. And they came right through the rock, and they knew it was real rock. And the US guys are here. And as soon as these whatever came through the rock, he said every single man in that detail from the US couldn't move. They had like a group paralysis. They were conscious, but they couldn't move. And he said it was one of the scariest, most frustrating things he'd ever experienced in his life. But he wanted me to know that this had happened to him for real. You start putting all of these pieces together of what has happened to Brian Stenseth, what has happened to the military people in my Antarctica documentary, to the men who were being described to me by this man at a conference. And there are several other pieces that fit in here having to do with a group of clear United States scientists who were brought in a group to Antarctica. They were given an assignment. They were in a working arrangement, and they are dropped off at a place that looked like a military operation on the top of the snow, but it actually had access down into rooms below. And all of those scientists disappeared. And part of the work that I have done with Brian and others is to get these stories told. And in this particular case, the scientists were returned, and Brian was in one of the planes taking these scientists out of Antarctica. He said they were traumatized. The scientists were literally traumatized. They didn't talk. They didn't ask for anything. They just got on the plane like zombies, he said, and they stayed on there. And he said at one point, I got out of my flight seat and I walked toward, there was a larger man at the end of several of these scientists, and he said, I just put my hand on his shoulder and he jumped like he was just fried. And he said, I wondered if I could get you water or anything. And the man pulled himself away from Brian. We need to understand the depth of the truth in all these cases. And that's what I hope we can continue to do at the Earthfiles YouTube channel and earthfiles.com for the foreseeable future, and that we will get the headlines around the world. We're not alone, and let's hope that we get the truth then with all of the complexities of the kind of solar system we are in, the galaxy we are in, and what humans are to all of it. Okay, Ian.
Yes, I'd like to acknowledge the generous super chats again this evening. Thank you again to Moonbird and the R. Elizabeth and Yin Yang Glow. Thank you for your support. We appreciate that. And the questions are still coming in, Linda. Jasper says, it's a serious question. If there are millions of solar systems in Milky Way galaxy, then why are aliens obsessed to influence planet Earth the most? Well, of course, I suppose as well, Linda, we don't know. They may be doing this with other planets we're not aware of. But there's something suspicious about it. It feels like aliens maybe knew what humans' real potential and destiny was. And it looks like they may have prevented humans' progress deliberately so that humans can fall behind the aliens' progress.
I think the key word is neighborhood. Yeah. I have introduced, a few years ago, a star map that I have made with the help, the assistance, and the feedback of somebody in aerospace who knows a great deal about a variety of non-humans. And in doing that star map, one of the sentences that he said more than once, put a needle or a peg on Earth and string, just for the exercise of doing this, and have it on a grid of true light years. And if you go out 20 light years and you draw your circle from the pencil at the center, then write down the star systems that are in that 20 light years, and then go out another 25. And now you're at 40 or 45 or 50, whichever circle diameter you choose. And within that circle, the vast majority of all that is close enough to be interactive in moving point to point, as the advanced ETs do, jumping dimensions. And that there is some sort of a relationship in the physics of how far you are from where you want to go, and that's why neighborhoods of solar systems are repeatable, that the more we will learn eventually, hopefully, that we will know that we are in a neighborhood. That's exactly what we are in. There's a cluster of various solar systems and various different types of ETs. And that one of the most interesting stories told to me also at another conference related to this neighborhood that has enemies and allies in it. The neighborhood are the solar systems in a certain 20 to 50 light year circle. And that this particular person knew about a war that had taken place in the solar system Rigel, R-I-G-E-L. You can look it up. And it was between reptilians and Nordics. Those are two names that are thrown around even on Colbert and everything now, because we are evolving, at least in literature and conferences, and these words and these stories come up. And in this particular case, this person told me there has been ongoing war between the reptilian humanoids and the blonde Nordic Scandinavian humanoids. And it was a huge length of time, and said in the last battle, the Nordics lost to the reptilians, and the Nordics had to leave their entire solar system. That was the first time I remember this story because I remember being struck, stunned by the idea that there could be conflict at solar system-wide size, and that whoever won that, like the skirmishes on a border in the world of Earth, this would be borders in solar systems. Then whoever lost has to leave. But they're not leaving just a house. They're leaving their planet. They're leaving their solar system. They're leaving their sun. That's the way it was described. Well, how big are those kinds of threats versus if we knew the whole truth, perhaps we in this solar system, this particular planet, has been protected, manipulated, all kinds of genetic experiments. But does that mean that the experimenters are somehow awful? I don't think it does. I think we need to learn more. But in the Rigel case, why I've remembered that is that the idea that there could be conflict at solar system levels, and if there was a loser, everybody would have to leave the whole solar system, that astounded me. I have no idea how true it was. The person seemed to know a great deal about a lot of things, both in aerospace and in physics, who told me that story, and he was trying to stress, we have been protected, whether we understand it or not. We have had protection. As an evolving Homo sapien, genetically manipulated, we are a genetically manipulated life form. Who knows everything? Who is cause and effect? That's what I would like so much to know. And as we go through the rest of this year, 2025 was on a whole bunch of people's lists 2 or 3 years ago about something really, 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 really traumatic or huge or involved with space happening in the year 2025. And we have an agitated planet at many levels by the human layer. If there is anyone who knows a great deal about what is on the docket in 2025 to 2030. We've talked about that before. But those crucial years could be a field that we're entering soon or are already in. And the more I and others can try to interview and report the truth, at least maybe we will be able to relax the traumatic conditioning that people have experienced because they don't know anything. They don't know what the truth is. And I personally, I'm all for telling the truth, the whole truth. And then, depending upon what that is, trying to evolve, knowing all the truth. Okay, Ian.
Yeah, that's a good segue here to my next question. We're going through what's going on for perhaps 80 years of this hidden truth, etc. And we've just passed the date of June 24th, 1947, when Kenneth Arnold first saw those objects over Mount Rainier, the crescent-shaped objects that he described. And you have a Kenneth Arnold connection as well, Linda, that from your father.
Isn't that something?
Share that. This is an amazing story.
Yeah, I'm 83 now, and if you go back to, I think that I was either in first grade or a year before or I just know that I was small, and but I was old enough to sit right next to my dad on the floor, listening to him talk with Kenneth Arnold. And Kenneth Arnold's daughter was sitting across from me, and I think she and I were playing jacks with ball and the little jacks on the floor. But even then, I often wonder about soul programming, conditioning, assignments, because even then, I remember I lost complete interest in the jacks, and I was listening to my father's voice, which was very, very serious. And I was listening to what Mr. Arnold had to say as this little girl sitting on the floor. And the one thing out of all of the commotion that I really distinctly remember from then, I have a clear memory, I could even hear my dad's voice. He was arguing with Kenneth Arnold that there were no extraterrestrials, there were no proof, that this had to be something that was misidentified in the sky. So my own father, right from the beginning, was a protester against the possibility of other life being in the skies of Earth. And yet I, his daughter, a little kid, I was listening so intently. And I remember that not only was I hearing intently that when Mr. Arnold started trying to describe what he was seeing from his plane, it was like a movie started in my own mind, as if I were somehow plugging into a subject that at age 4, 5, or 6, I had no idea of anything about. But maybe inside of us, as we come into each life, there is some kind of programming that makes us especially sensitive for certain subjects. And in my case, I loved astronomy. Even then as that little kid, I'd ask Mom and Dad for a telescope when I was 4. And what are those links? Are they soul links to some kind of program? And if we understood it all, would it make us better life forms, less war, less hatred, if we knew the whole bigger truth? Okay, Ian?
Yeah, that was amazing that your father knew I guess it was through his connection, wasn't he, head of aeronautics?
My dad was
direct.
Dad was the director of aeronautics for the state of Idaho for a very long time, and he did search and rescue. They saved so many people, and in that search and rescue program, it was volunteer pilots with their volunteering their plane, their time, and that they would go into accidents. And another memory that just came through as vivid as a cinemascope was hearing the phone, only landline. And when that phone rang at night, my brother, myself, Mom, we knew it's going to be a pilot is down. And Dad would get up at every hour. Sometimes it might be a quiet night, but he was always answering the phone in case that it was a wounded or surviving or a pilot. And Kenneth Arnold was one of the people that Dad was friends with and depended upon for keeping the search and rescue part of the Department of Aeronautics in the state of Idaho going. And that was what bonded them. And I remember as I got older, the idea that my dad had been getting up all those unbelievable hours, and that I never fully understood until I was older, that when he left and the door closed and I could hear his truck start up, I never really fully understood that he was going in order to fly with trusted people like Kenneth Arnold, to fly so that they could get to whatever would be the nearest backcountry airstrip to do survival, save the people who had crashed or that there was a problem. And that was what my dad did and what I saw and heard through high school.
Yeah, it's worth noting as well that Kenneth Arnold was actually searching for a lost military C-46 plane at the time when he had his sighting. So
yeah, he was working with Dad.
he didn't actually find the plane. I don't know if it was found or not, but that would be interesting to know. So, yeah, and then of course the next day, I think tomorrow is the anniversary of the Chicago Sun and Tribune, isn't it? It published it and gave the name flying saucers to the phenomena, even though Kenneth Arnold described them as crescent-shaped, and other objects seen in the same time frame were crescent-shaped objects, including the ones that were supposedly recovered as well, were in crescent shape. But Kenneth Arnold described them as flying as though as a saucer would if you skimmed it across water.
Right. That's right.
Said, and that's what the press picked up on.
That's right. And the illustration that he did, which is in his book, The Coming of the Saucers, that was autographed, I have it in my library, by Kenneth Arnold to my dad about the UFOs that Kenneth Arnold saw. That is a type. There are round types. There are so many different types that over the years, the very fact that people would be said, oh, you're lying because there's no shape like that. No, the phenomena has come in many, 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 many Go ahead.
Yeah, the crescent-shaped one was photographed, actually, wasn't it? A few days before the Roswell crash, and that was published in some of the newspapers at the time. So there were several pictures of that craft being photographed, which again haven't been seen or was being seen and reported. Even at, I believe, the Trinity site crash was even reporting the as a crescent-shaped craft, according
like
to,
this.
do you remember the letters to Earthfiles with bismuth magnesium?
That's right. That's right. So people should not lock in that there's a pattern or two patterns. There are lots of patterns, and the other part that I would say in the last 20 to 30 years, maybe since the Vietnam War, that humans became very aware that there is shape-shifting. There's shape-shifting of bodies, shape-shifting of craft, and one of the big ones that was described to me by a military pilot, that this was his assignment, was to learn as much as he could be taught about an invisibility technology that the extraterrestrials, whatever you want to call them, this was where you can make a plane disappear in a sky if you can reflect the sky instead of the plane, which means a control on photons in such a manner that you could pop in and pop out of visibility, because you would have a coating that would impact photon reflection. And if you don't have photon reflection, then you will mirror the sky. And that was one of the huge eye-opening discussions. This goes back a long time ago. It's when I was still director of special projects at the CBS station in Denver. And this was a pilot. And he called me up at the station and said he wanted to come. A Strange Harvest had been broadcast. And that man came and he showed me his ID and he said, I have been in a program in which we have been studying the blank out invisibility technology that something is using in our skies to disguise craft. I still remember that distinctly. That's how complicated it all is. But I don't find that it is any reason not to tell everybody. It's not something that I think that we have to be afraid of. It's probably being applied everywhere in all military and intel operations now, because we've learned so much from the extraterrestrials, Ian.
Exactly. And people are saying this, that disclosure is not necessarily an event, it's a process, and that the people themselves, the experiences themselves, are also part of the disclosure process, and they are disclosure, we are disclosure.
Yeah. Let's see, we're at the bottom of the half hour. Shall we, which is the bottom of the hour for us, should we take one or two more questions? Tell me what you think from what you've got on your list.
Yeah, well, I've got a question here from Chris George Alexander, who's a regular in our chat, and he says, completely on target as usual, the video tonight, Linda. A thought, if an ET NHI species far ahead of us have been here for even hundreds of thousands of years, should we not consider them as much Earthlings as we are?
Absolutely true question. Complicated pieces of answers that I've been in discussions with people about. But I want to emphasize here, I think I didn't start talking about this until 3 or 4 years ago, and it was the World Bank and the Defense Intelligence Agent who was retiring after 23 years working for the DIA. And those two men were colleagues, the DIA and the World Bank. And they sought me out. And there was this meeting that went on for 7 hours, and it was our bladders that finally we had to interrupt one of the most fascinating discussions of my entire life. And they wanted me to know what they said is the absolute truth about the types of non-humans, how long they had been here, and some other basics. They said, you've got to have some orientation. And in those 7 hours of great detail, if you boiled it down, it would be Earth has been under a kind of conflict between different types of extraterrestrials for at least 270 million years. I have also been told by another source that there is another significant event that very few people know about or have ever talked about that happened at 268 million. 268 versus 270. I think World Bank and the DIA knew all the details of 268, but I think that they just chose to round off the number. And when you go through that 7 hours, as I do in my mind often, about what those two men told me, you're back to conflict between reptilians, Nordics, and possibly tall whites, and reptilians. Reptilians, Nordics, tall whites, and grays. Those were the main competitors. And they also told me a fascinating story about who actually ended the existence of dinosaurs on this planet. They said who. They gave me when. They never gave me why. I ask, but for some reason, it's been one of the biggest puzzles. And just to close out this program, we can pick these up in the next program. The conflict, the reptilians had been at war with the blonde Nordics for a very long time, and that would be one of the solar systems that I was talking about earlier, Rigel. That there was a huge war in the Rigel solar system, and the reptilians prevailed, and it was the Nordics' solar system, but they had to leave. And that the Greys have a more complicated relationship. The Greys seem to have vested interests in some things related to humans and Earth, and that whatever it is that they go after, they do so in very deceptive ways, which is different from the all-out physical violence between the Nordics and the reptilians. But they said in this meeting with these two men in December of 1999, they said the reptilians are masters at shape-shifting. And there was a huge part of that dialogue about how the reptilians could, in their natural state, look like a standing-up alligator or a standing-up lizard, and then they change something at the subatomic particle level, and they look like a Nordic. They look exactly at that moment like the ones that they are in fight with and they're trying to defeat. The idea that there would be shape-shifting planes in a sky also was part of that discussion. And here we are on June 25th, 2025. And going back how many years now? At least to the end of the 1980s and early 1990s, when the remote viewers working for the CIA and DIA in Washington, D.C., they did a series of remote viewings. And one of the repetitive themes, at least talking with Lynn Buchanan and some of them that were there, was that by the year 2025 to the year 2030, there would be huge, tumultuous chaos on Earth. And we are at June of 2025. Why have we still not been told the truth? That's what keeps me going. Here at the Earthfiles YouTube channel, there's my big earthfiles.com, and this sense that if we all could just do an agape hug, then maybe all the wars would go away, and something from outer space that's been here a long time, it might go away too. Agape hug, you guys. Agape hug. See you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white Settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.